What's going on, you guys? Welcome on back to the channel. Now, episode 1138 just dropped for the One Piece anime, and I'm just going to come out and say it. That 6 month hiatus didn't really do anything for the One Piece anime. In fact, in my opinion, it pretty much was just a band aid on a larger issue because this episode is hands down one of the worst that One Piece has put out in a very long time, right? Like we've all seen some bad One Piece episodes. We were there for Dressrosa. We saw pretty much everything. But this episode hurts the most because we all thought that days like this were behind us, right? At least for me. I thought these days were behind us where we had episodes like this. But it just goes to show, man, as long as One Piece is a weekly anime, we will never be able to get away from these problems that the anime has. But what happened in this episode that made it so bad? Because for the longest time, at least for me, the Kuma flashback has been nothing but bangers like week after week. I haven't had really a single complaint with the Kuma flashback. It was pretty much great from beginning to end. The problem is this episode essentially served as a Kuma flashback recap, and we just had 12 weeks of the flashback told to us in the anime. This was hands down the worst way to go about this chapter. And they only really adapted like what, 2 to 3 pages overall in the episode? This was horrible. This was one of the worst adapted episodes, or what's it? Worst adapted chapters I think I've seen in a long time, man. This is so bad. Like first and foremost, like getting into the episode proper, we literally see Kuma taking 20 seconds in between each step. Okay, that's one. We see the same reuse shot of Bonnie crying multiple times. That's two. We see literally the exact same stock image of Vegapunk multiple times. Like during this sequence, we see multiple reaction shots of Sanji and Frankie. Like that alone is pretty bad. That alone is some of the is pretty bad stuff. But then we see what I think is the most egregious thing in this episode, and that is like the almost 8 minute recap of Kuma's flashback. But the reason why they were able to get away with it low key is because of the music choice that they implemented into it. And I'm not gonna lie, it got to me a little bit when I first watched it. You know what? I didn't have a problem at first. I didn't really realize the issue at first because the music that they chose was so good for that segment. But when I went back to it on a second rewatch, and I watched it without the music, it hit me. Oh wait, I'm literally watching the exact same shit, beat for beat, only in a worse way. And the only reason it's even labeled differently is because Bonnie is recapping the memories that she saw to Kuma. Now, a lot of people could come and say like, "Oh, that's a different way to go about talking about the flashbacks, and it's not really a recap." No, this is a recap. This is one of the worst implementations of a recap I think I've seen from the One Piece anime because it just goes to show that putting the punch at the end of the last episode, while it was a great thematic choice for the episode and ended it in such a great way, like that episode already felt like a cinematic experience, so ending it with the punch was the right way to go about it. But ending it with the punch caused problems for this episode because it drastically affected the pacing. The pacing drastically got affected because not only did we see the exact same wind up shot of Kuma at the beginning of this episode, frame for frame, the exact same shit from last episode of Kuma punching Saturn, but we got that 8 minute flashback recap. And then we got all the stuff that I talked about at the beginning of this video. And it just goes to show that the One Piece anime is always going to have these issues. These problems are never going to go away. Like, as soon as you notice that they adapted more than one chapter per episode, like they did last episode, you're going to run into stuff like this again. This episode just goes to show that the One Piece anime will never escape this. They can take as many hiatuses as they want. It's not going to fix anything. It's just going to be a band aid over a bigger issue. Because as long as the One Piece anime is a weekly anime experience, they will never fully escape this. This is something that will never go away. Until we get the One Piece that's going to happen on Netflix, we are never going to be able to truly escape the Toei issues that plague the One Piece anime. That's never going to go away. And this episode just solidified for me that the production and the adaptation for an arc could be damn near perfect as it is with Egghead, right? I haven't really had many complaints at all with Egghead. I've enjoyed the experience wholeheartedly. I've loved every minute of the Egghead anime. But this episode just goes to show that these issues will always creep back in, right? You're always going to have like Toei piece shit going on. Like it's something that we can never truly escape. And I was kind of naive to think that we did for a little bit. I thought with the 6 month hiatus, we were kind of these kind of days were kind of gone. I thought that was it. But this episode, man, this episode broke me in a way I didn't think I was gonna feel like this again. Like like I said, I thought these days were behind us, right? I thought this was over, but just goes to show, man, that as long as One Piece is weekly, it's never truly over. We're going to get more stuff like this, and I shiver now to think what could happen near the end of Egghead, right? I am genuinely scared for how they're going to handle some of the other stuff that happens because the latter half of Egghead and everything that we're about to get next is so crucial to get right. There is one panel already in my head that if it isn't adapted properly, I might have to drop like this segment of the anime because dude, there's so much shit coming up that if they don't handle it properly, there could be some uproar within the community. And I'm not talking about dumb stuff like Sanji and Zoro stuff. No, 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 no. There's bigger stuff that's about to be adapted that if it's not adapted properly, it's going to affect One Piece as a whole, or at least the anime in Egghead. And this episode right here kind of felt like it was one of the easiest to adapt, and now it's one of the worst. So it's got me worried for the future of Egghead, but I'm remaining optimistic. I'm not ready to jump ship, but like I said, man, as long as One Piece remains a weekly series, these issues are never going to go away. There's something that we're always going to have to deal with, no matter how good the production is. But I think that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. How did you guys feel about this new episode of One Piece? Did you guys think it was kind of a return to the dark days of Dressrosa like me? Or did you guys think the episode wasn't really all that bad? Let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe. And as always, I'm going to talk to you guys next time. Bye.